Hello, my name is Edwin Patterson. Thank you for joining me today. The next 4 videos are going to be very interesting. They were to me. We have covered the anti-movement from the very first with Alexander Campbell and on with the beginning people up through the ages. We're now to today. What do the antis think about us? And really, it's in my take, because this is my interest, is the Book of Mormon true, and is Joseph a prophet? What do the antis say about that? So I have 4 videos coming, 1, 2, 3, 4 after this, that is going to do this. We're going to look at what is on the internet. What do they say? And it'll be in 4 topics. The first is, does Joseph, did he have the education enough or the ability to create the Book of Mormon? That's a very interesting question. Secondly, and like unto it, is did he have a plan to write the Book of Mormon? Okay, what do they have to say about that? Thirdly, how did he write the Book of Mormon? And fourthly, how are ways to show that it isn't really true? So again, I've told you there are sites, 10s, 20s, 30, 40, 50, 60s, many sites out there on the internet that say Joseph is the creator of the Book of Mormon. And that's okay, they take a stand. My stand is completely opposite of that. Joseph did not write and could not have written the Book of Mormon. So we're just going to go through some of the things they say and see how things go. So just walk with me, if you will, as we go through this. And at the conclusion, you're going to see some very interesting results on the first topic, which is, did Joseph have the education or the ability to write the Book of Mormon? Okay, so number 1, anti-historian William Davis. Now, I've talked about William Davis before. William was a Mormon who left, and he was doing a PhD. And his PhD was, how much education did Joseph Smith have? So, concluded that the overall combined effect of historical sources point to a higher amount of Joseph's formal education. It amounted to approximately 7 years. So he couldn't find Joseph in school 7 years, but the historical average is 7 years. And you may remember this or not, school in the old days was 4 or 5 months, from November to March, somewhere in there. The teachers were untrained. So Joseph may have gone 7 years. I don't know. This guy's guessing. The church says about 3. They don't know. It's just an estimate. So that's the first kind of shot across the bow. Let's keep going forward. Joseph's father worked as a school teacher for a time. That's an interesting for a time. The reality is he taught 1 year back in Vermont when he was in financial straits, and he taught because he needed the money to teach. How good was he? I don't know. But it makes it sound like he's a teacher for a long time. That's not the case. Okay, number 3. Joseph was not an illiterate backwoods boy. In October of 1829, he wrote the first known letter that remains showing that he could write well. I've read that letter, and it is not something that's a polished English phrase. The only information we have is from Emma, his wife, and from his mother. Emma says Joseph couldn't write a legible sentence before the Book of Mormon. His mother said he didn't like to study. He liked to ponder, but not study. That's really all the information we have from eyewitnesses. So that's one shot they take, and it's an interesting one. The next one. Formal training in writing and composition was not necessary for the culture of oral history or oral storytelling that Joseph grew up in, and which could have produced the Book of Mormon. So this tact is, he was just making up out of his mind because everyone told stories back in Joseph's day. This was no big deal. Interesting, but 588 pages that have been looked at through a microscope, that's a lot of telling from a storyteller. Okay? Joseph's talents were immense, but they were not superhuman. And this is a theme that I've seen over and over again. Joseph was a pretty smart guy, but not a real smart guy. And I don't know why they take that tact. We acknowledge this. Joseph had the ability, the brains. He just didn't have the education to produce the Book of Mormon. This wasn't a family of illiterates. Education was important to the Smith family, and I agree with that. I believe it was important to them. Joseph may have known only limited formal education in a typical classroom, but his parents undoubtedly schooled him at home. We don't know that, but I would presume some amount of that would happen. Also, Joseph was seen going to high school when he was 20 years old in Harmony, Pennsylvania with the Stoll children. There's no asterisk on that, and I have never found that. I don't know if that's true or not. But the point would be, how much education did Joseph have? Sufficient to create the Book of Mormon. Now, if you're following me at all, my thought is, just looking at the words in the Book of Mormon, Joseph could not have created those, could not have known the definition of those. Many, many, many other things we'll bring up to come. But Joseph is not the candidate to write based upon his preparation, his amount of education. Okay, next. You can compare today's homeschooling with Joseph's and say, would anyone say that these homeschooled children are underqualified? That seems weird to me. Comparing today's homeschooling to his, we don't even know what kind of homeschooling he got. So again, it's throwing out a breadcrumb, an innuendo, a maybe to put suspicion in people's minds. And yet there's no truth in that. They can't say, this is where I found that. It's in a book called this and this place. And that's over and over and over again. Okay, the last two. Through his daily reading and study, we don't know that he read daily and studied daily. I think, said this particular anti, it's very easy to say that his education in the Bible was extensive and involved, sufficient to write the Book of Mormon. Again, all of that conjecture and guess. Last one, Smith was raised on the Bible. He and the family read it every single day. Surely that qualifies as some sort of education. The antis haven't got a lot going here. This is tough for them because there is no place where you can go and say, okay, did Joseph go to school? I find records. We have found books that he owned, so we know he's went to some school, whether that's 3 years or 7 years, somewhere in there. But was it sufficient to create a book like the Book of Mormon? That's the contention of the antis. My contention is not a chance in heck Joseph came up with it, just based on the words in it alone. We'll go on from there, but that's an interesting angle. My surmise is Joseph could not have come up with this book. And remember the nut that the antis have to crack. We'll talk about this down the road. He had 57 days to create the Book of Mormon. 57 days. 588 pages in the first Book of Mormon. That's 10 pages of translation every day. Well, we'll get to that in a little bit. But as you can see, the antis have a problem creating a Joseph that has sufficient education and ability to write the Book of Mormon. Okay, thank you so much. Appreciate your time.